DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesianicristo.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are at listening in to us live here on INCRadio, South Central States. I am your host for today, Brother Nathan Russell. Excuse me, fighting a bit of the allergies going on here, which is relevant to our topic for today, which is Texas springtime travel guide. So, of course, here in Fort Worth, we're having really warm weather today. So it's back in the 80s again. Who knows what it's going to be throughout the week, really. But we thank you for tuning in. Please, please, please drop all your comments into the live chat. Love to hear from everybody here today, especially when it comes to our experiences with traveling in Texas. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. I'll go ahead and drop our question of the day into the chat. And that question is, where is your favorite place to travel to? And of course, we're talking about the context of here in Texas. So if you have any Texas experiences traveling anywhere here within this really big state, we'd love to hear it. Of course, if you're not familiar with the state of Texas, if you were to try to drive end to end, I think it takes about 12 hours from Louisiana all the way to New Mexico if you had to cross through Texas. So it is a very large state, encompassing a lot of different geographies. Best way I can describe the geography is if you think of I-35, which runs from DFW all the way down through San Antonio. Okay. If you go west of that, everything starts looking like a Western. Okay. You start seeing more deserts, you start seeing more plateaus and mountains. And then when you head east, it starts looking like the rest of the Southeast, which is mostly pine trees. Okay. So that kind of divides up the state. And that gives us a lot of diversity as far as like what you can encounter in the state of Texas. So I'd love to hear about your experiences traveling in Texas. Of course, I'd love to have everybody share out their experiences so that others may know of a few, gems they may not have heard of to consider traveling throughout Texas. Because of course, the weather's going to be great this spring. So go ahead and drop that into the chat, and we'll go ahead and talk about the weather. Actually, so Texas during the spring. It could be categorized by cool nights and warm to hot days. So you may not want to put away all your sweaters yet. Okay, we hit 90 degrees every now and then. It does not mean that winter is necessarily over. So of course, we're still going to get cold air coming off the plains that'll visit us here, and then we'll have warm air coming from the Gulf to warm us back up. So you're going to have kind of this bouncing for back and forth bouncing around of the temperatures. So like this week, it's going to be like 60 to 80, 60 to 80. And for those who are in centigrade, that's really nice t-shirt weather, cool t-shirt weather to warm t-shirt weather, basically. Uh, don't really need, a jacket or anything for 60-degree weather. But then it's going to rain. And when it rains, it's going to happen to bring cooler weather. So it can drop back down into the 40s. And I think looking next week, it's even going to get down to the 30s. So it's going to be kind of interesting, the weather that we're going to see. Also to keep in mind is spring allergies. So, when those flowers start to bloom, when the trees start to bloom, we're kind of ground central for like 4 or 5 different allergies here in the state of Texas. So at any point in time, you may be affected by these. So just something to keep in mind. Of course, cedar allergies are the worst. Okay, if you get cedar fever, it is the worst time. There is no medicine, as far as I know, that can counteract it. It's just good luck. You're going to be non-functional for like a week or two. But you also have to be prepared for thunderstorms and tornadoes and hail. So we do get a lot of interesting weather since we are at the tail end of Tornado Alley is what they call it. Okay, so we are at the very bottom of it. So keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and drop into the comments and see who is joining us so far here today. Let's see. My wife is joining from Fort Worth. She says, "Happy viewing, everyone." We also have our sister Leah Hill from the local of Biloxi, and also our brother Jerry from Biloxi. Let's see. Sister Melanie answered the question anywhere as long as I'm with my family, but hiking in Wichita Mountains is always fun. So, technically, the Wichita Mountains are in Oklahoma, but it is just right across that border. So, it is within reach, especially if you're here in DFW. Brother Jerry says, lots of great places to visit here in Texas. We're going to talk about them, and feel free to drop in your suggestions too. Our sister Kaylin Lee joining us from Hawaii Pacific. Now, Texas is no Hawaii. We do have, we may not have beaches that are quite as nice as Hawaii, but we do have a lot of other things that Hawaii doesn't have. So it's about enjoying what's around you. So even though here in Texas we're not known for a lot of things, there are a lot of places you can go since we are a very big state. So sister Kaylin says her favorite place to travel is at my home countries of both Malaysia and the Philippines, and she's been to Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, and Waco. And she says, "Howdy, thank you for joining us here today." Let's see. Brother Jerry Hill says recently they visited Houston and stopped by the Gerald D. Hines Waterwall Park. I used to live in Houston. I don't think I ever visited the Waterwall, but that is a very interesting site. You can just take your favorite search engine and look up the water wall in Houston. And Houston's one of those really good cities if you want a lot of attractions all in one city. Just be mindful of the traffic. The traffic is very bad there. Let's see. We have our brother Ron Seaman watching from Natural State in Jacksonville, Arkansas, where you can watch the full solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024. Everyone is invited to join us for the event. Yes, there is going to be a solar eclipse, and actually, it is going to travel through Texas and all the way up into Arkansas. Fortunately, too, it's going to happen here in DFW, so maybe we'll have to do an episode on the solar eclipse. Of course, do not look at the solar eclipse; not good for your eyes. You're basically looking at the sun, so don't do that. Let's see. And our sister Kaylin Lee says she hasn't been to Houston and further down yet. Likewise to El Paso. I haven't been to El Paso either. I've been close. I got like an hour away from El Paso. But she said she shall return to the Lone Star State someday. She misses eating Tex Mex foods, although it is salty. She says aloha and 73. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and transition then to food since we just left off on food. So, what are some places to travel for food? Okay. So, if you want to continue dropping in your suggestions in the comments, feel free to do so. But we're going to talk about food right now. So, love to hear about foods, especially if we miss some. But what is Texas most known for? What food are we most known for? Of course, it's barbecue. Okay. Texas is known for its barbecue. So, I'm not going to just say like we're the best, even though we are. But there are like let's see, we have Texas barbecue, Memphis barbecue, Kansas City barbecue, and Carolina barbecue. Those are the four main ones that I know of. They say that dominate kind of American barbecue. And just to set us apart here in Texas, ours is characterized by that slow smoking. So it comes from the cowboy culture. You would have these tough pieces of meat from the cattle, and it's barbecue itself is based on I think it's Spanish or Mexican. It comes from barbacoa. Of course, here in Texas, they kind of made it their own thing where it's cooking with smoke. So a lot of these barbecue places in Texas, and you'll see them, as you're getting closer. There's smokestacks and there's smoke coming out of it. And as you walk in, they got all the smokers set up. That's when you know it's going to be good barbecue when they're smoking it right there on the spot. Um, but yeah, you'll go to these places and you order your meat by the pound, and then you get your different sides and whatnot. The sauce is always separate. So I think like Kansas City barbecue, they cook it with the sauce. Sauce is separate here in Texas. Okay, so it's a separate thing. But if you get the brisket, okay, brisket's typically a tough piece of meat. But when you slow smoke it, you can get it really tender where it's falling apart. You'll get a nice spice crust going around it. The best. Do not throw away the burnt ends on a brisket. That's the best stuff. But always get moist. Okay. You can either get dry brisket or you can get moist brisket. Always get the moist. The moist is marbled with fat. The fat just absorbs It absorbs all that smoky flavor. I mean, it is amazing. Okay. So if you get brisket, make sure you always get the moist. Also, with Texas, we have Tex-Mex. So you may hear a lot of people say like, "Oh, Tex-Mex, that's not real Mexican food." Of course not. It's not Mexican food. It's Tex-Mex. Okay, Texas, at one point was its own country, and Texas kind of has its own food culture. Uh, Tex-Mex food is characterized by meat, cheese, tends to be heavier than what do you call it, Californian Mexican food. And proper like Mexican food. Once you go south of the border, there's different ingredients that were localized wherever they were. But for Texas, you got to have that cheese and the meat. Um, and if you go to any Tex-Mex places, get the queso, which is a cheese sauce. You eat it with the nachos. Oftentimes, the nachos are free too. Um, but tell me also, what are your thoughts on cilantro? Have you had cilantro? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it tastes like soap? Personally, I never had cilantro growing up in Florida. Didn't know what it was. I came to Texas and I was like, "What is this green stuff? Let me go ahead and throw it on." And I was initially off put by it. I was like, "What is this? It tastes like soap." But I've actually come around to really enjoying cilantro. So I am team cilantro. I do like cilantro. Let me know if you like it or not. Okay. Um, Also, other foods. I came across this. It's called Texas caviar. I never heard of it until now. I've been in Texas a little over 15 years. I never heard of Texas caviar, but it's beans, black eyed peas, tomatoes, peppers, onions tossed in a tangy dressing and served with tortilla chips on the side. Maybe I've had it before. I don't know, but it sounded really interesting when I came across this. I was looking up when I was researching uh, different foods around Texas and also Texas chili. Okay. And Texans can be real particular about the chili and they're very strict about it. Chili has no beans in it. Okay. I don't really care either way. I like, chili with or without beans. But Texas chili is typically just, the spiced chili, whatever you call it, soup. It's a thick soup. I'm at a loss for words, but no beans. Okay. It's just meat and the chili sauce. Okay. So if you go around and you try out Texas chili, don't be surprised if there's no beans in it. Okay. Another thing to consider too is if you're traveling through Texas, especially when you're going in between the cities, there were a lot of these smaller towns that were settled by like Czechoslovakian and like German immigrants, and they brought along, their foods, but then they also had to adapt their foods based on local ingredients. And so, like, and it seems kind of odd, but like there's like really large gas stations all throughout Texas, peppered, throughout the country in the rural areas. And they'll have like a Czech name or a German name, and they'll have like their own little cuisines. Okay. I know there's one south of DFW and they specialize in making their own sausages. Kolaches. Okay. That's another regional thing. I've only heard of kolaches here in Texas. I mean, it's just basically a breakfast roll. Okay. But it's based on, I believe, Czechoslovakian foods. But yeah, gas stations. You wouldn't think. There's a particular gas station too. I'm not going to name any brands, but it's probably one of the biggest gas stations you will ever encounter. I mean, hundreds of pumps. I often joke that you could see it from space, but it's also worth visiting. When you're traveling in between Texas towns. But let's go ahead and drop back into our chat. Let's see. I have. Ooh, it's a lot. Hold on. I'm gonna have to catch up. We got a lot joining us today. All right, we have Ederlin Aquino saying happy watching. Let's see, and we're being greeted from Jacksonville, Arkansas. Let's see, and then my wife says Mineral Wells State Park is my new favorite place to visit near DFW. Okay, it has a giant lake, and you can like rent canoes and you can go out in it. You can swim in it. Okay, let's see, we have Noena Ledesma greeting us from INC Radio Caribbean. Thank you for joining us. And then we also have our brother Jerry Hill again. There are several retro arcades in Texas. My son and I have visited this. Let's see. I won't mention specifically. Okay. in Houston and in Dallas. So yeah, there's retro play arcades. They pop up on a map, easy to find. And typically it's just you pay at the door, and these are family friendly places, so you can bring your children. You pay once, and then you can play all the games, all the old arcade games. So they got lots of those here. Let's see. Our sister Nowena Ledesma from Caribbean says tropical weather here in the Caribbean and surrounded by seawater. So, of course, here in Texas, we only have one coastline, the Gulf Coast. You have some beaches there, although I will say Galveston is not a nice beach. I'm not even going to try to sell it. It's not nice. There is a barrier island though, further out from Galveston, and it is a lot nicer beach. But then when you go down south to like Padre Island, the beaches get way nicer. So something to keep in mind if you want to check out a beach in Texas. Let's see. The new seafood city in Sugarland is a great place to eat Filipino food and to buy groceries. Yes, if you like Filipino food, if you're missing Filipino food, I know pretty much every major Texas city will have, Filipino grocery or a restaurant. Okay, so something to check out. Let's see. Our sister Nowena says cowfoot, oxtail, and rice and peas po here in the Caribbean as their food. Even turtle stew is their delicacy here. I've had turtle once and only once. I'll just say that. Let's see. Sister Kaylin says she's been to both San Antonio's Alamo and River Walk, blah, Fort Worth's Stockyard, downtown Dallas, Waco, and Austin. This was the summer of 2021 when the pandemic was still around, and she says she misses those cool days. Let's see. Brother Jerry Hill says the baker's son is a Filipino bakery in Houston. Of course, uh we're not sponsored, nor do we sponsor any particular brand. So just worth checking out on your own. And of course, Jollibee and Max's. Okay. Jollibee. Enough said, right? They do have one also here in Dallas, but we're not sponsored by Jollibee. I had to put that out there. And Ivy Villanueva says, greetings from the local of Biloxi. Also, awesome. All right. And Clay Esmus. Hey, brother Clay from Fort Worth, my own local. Thank you for joining. All right. So we talked about food. Let's go ahead and talk about the outdoors a little. So reservoir lakes. Okay. Texas actually does not have, well, no, let me rephrase that. Texas only has exactly one natural lake in the whole state. Okay. And we actually share it with Louisiana. So maybe it's counted only as half a lake. Okay. But the reservoir lakes, these were often formed, by like damming up a river, and then a lake would form in that area. So there are essentially no natural lakes in Texas, but the reservoirs, a lot of them are state parks. As Sister Melanie mentioned before, Lake Mineral Wells. So you have this park in the middle of this valley. Okay, so while you're swimming in the water, even though it's not Hawaii or the Caribbean, you do get to swim. Where you're surrounded by like cliffs. You get a nice, little hilly scenery. The Texas Hill Country is a beautiful area too, just driving through. So if you drive from like Austin to the DFW, like, veer a little bit west and take the side roads. Fun fact: the side roads, the speed limits are often the same as the interstate. Okay, so something to consider. So it's not necessarily slower, but you do get a much more scenic drive. Now, around the Austin area, they have spring water swimming holes. They're spring fed. They're clean. They're cold. So maybe not right now. Maybe not. Maybe that was more appropriate for like a summertime travel thing, because the water will be cold coming out of the ground. But they have lots of swimming holes around the Austin area. Pedernales Falls is really close to Austin. There's like a small waterfall, and it goes into like this little oasis, spring water oasis, and you're surrounded by trees. It's really, really, really nice. You have to look up the pictures. Probably the best one, and I haven't been there yet. It's very hard to get to, just because of how popular it is. And that's Hamilton Pool. Okay, if you don't believe me, look up pictures of Hamilton Pool. Amazing place. I still have yet to see it. I've been trying to go for years. it always seems closed down or overbooked. I still have not seen Hamilton Pool, and I really need to. Okay. Okay. So besides swimming holes, close to El Paso. Shout out to El Paso. They have the Guadalupe Mountains right there along the border. I think it's like an hour away. Texas's highest point is the Guadalupe Mountains. Real nice place to visit. I mean, it's just flat desert and then boom, big mountain coming out of the ground. Okay. And then, of course, north of Lubbock, you have Cap Rock and Palo Duro Canyon. So a lot of people don't even know about Palo Duro Canyon. It is the second largest canyon here in the United States, often overshadowed by the Grand Canyon. But what I like about Palo Duro Canyon and Cap Rock Canyon, which is part of the same canyon chain, okay, you actually go into the canyon. You're hiking within it. I know in the Grand Canyon, it's a lot deeper, so it's there. I know there's ways to get down to the bottom of that canyon, but it's not easily accessible as like Caprock or Palo Duro. I mean, they just here you go. Here's your canyon. Go run around, have fun. But don't get lost in the canyon. And you might not want to go when it's hot because the canyon walls tend to have this effect of making it feel like an oven. All right, let's see. Go ahead and go back to the comments. Let's see. We have a few more. Let's see. Oh, Brother Jerry says everything's bigger in Texas except the Alamo. Okay. The Alamo, of course, is in San Antonio, next to the Riverwalk, too. So, San Antonio is, I believe, the most visited city for tourism. They got theme parks, they got the Alamo, they got the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk, best way to describe it is like think of like images of Europe when they would have like a river going through the town and then, they build all around it and it's nice and touristy. It's like that, maybe not as nice, but each kind of area along the Riverwalk, they decorated it as their own. You just have to see it. You just have to see it. It's a nice place to walk. Let's see. And Brother Jerry says also Lucy Park in Wichita Falls is a great uh hidden gem to visit. Wichita Falls. I think that's north. Yeah, North Texas, close to the border of Oklahoma. Let's see. Oh, we have one more from Brother Ron. Crater Diamond State Park in Arkansas. So he's shouting out Arkansas in their Texas episode. That's fine. Arkansas is, maybe 4 or 5 hours, to get to the interior of the state. And you can actually find your own gems and you get to keep it. Yes, I heard about that. You can actually go find diamonds in the dirt there in Arkansas. So, I'll let that transition us to our last segment. And that is like kid friendly places to visit with the whole family. So, of course, we already mentioned amusement parks. Of course, there's water parks and not just the big ones, but there's also like smaller ones. Don't discount those, especially if you have smaller children. Maybe if you don't want to have to try to search for where your child is at because they've ran all over the place, these smaller water parks can be just as fun. Houston, lots of museums, art museums, children museums. I think they had like a list somewhere, and there's like over 100 museums in Houston. Okay, so Houston's a really great city to visit if you want attractions like that, especially the Space Center, as mentioned. I will say though about the Space Center, it is better for children. It is more of a children's attraction, although you do get to see one of the rockets. So when I took my son there, I was like, okay, there's a lot of play place and this and that. Not really a whole lot of stuff for adults, just a few things here and there where they can show you like the control center and the rocket. I mean, the rocket, it's impressive. Your mind cannot fathom how large these rockets are. So it's worth seeing. But yeah, just keep in mind it's mostly for children at the Space Center in Houston. Drive-through zoos. Okay, I want to bring that up. There's a drive-through zoo not too far away from here in DFW. I think an hour away, and I mean, it is what it's described as. You drive through the zoo. It feels like you're on a safari. The animals are just roaming free. So keep that in mind. Maybe you don't want to bring your nicest vehicle because the deer and the I think giraffes too. They get up right into your vehicle. They do have cheetahs there, but they're not roaming free, so you don't have to worry about that. They do have them behind a cage, but all the other animals that are safe, um, yeah, they're just roaming free, and you're just driving amongst them. So interesting experience, and it's in the hill country. you're already in that hill country. So the whole thing is like really, really nice. And then I'll go ahead and close on caverns. We do have lots of caverns here in Texas. I know there's probably like images in your head of maybe getting stuck in some dark place, but there's different levels of caverns. You can, do that where you're crawling through mud and going through tight spaces, or you can just be in a nice open place that's well lit. It's family friendly. I took my son to one not too long ago, and we had a good time exploring the caverns. But that takes us to the end of today's show. We thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and shout out our district CFO overseer, Brother Christian Agron, our assistant district minister, Brother Gilbert Anachete, our district minister, Brother Andre B. Silva, our executive producer, Brother Emmanuel Dias, station manager, Brother Arnel Solano, our CFO and SEPC president, Brother Angelo Arano V. Manalo, and of course, our executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Be sure to tune in to INC Radio South Central States next Saturday, same time, 1 p.m. Stay tuned for INC Radio Latin America coming up next.